family, we have 10 pets. They are 3 Westies, Saffron, Belle and Beau, 5 tortoises, Herbie and Bernadette, Amy and Sheldon and Penny, and we have the 2 rabbits who are Poppy and Daisy. And the fact that there is several dogs I find really helps, because we've got several children and everybody can have a cuddle at the same time and everybody can get that attention really. The children that we've had and young people that we've had have often spent more time with the dogs initially, because you can have a chat if you want to chat, you don't get quizzed, you don't get asked anything, and they're just lovely company. So this is what we call the den, and it's our semi-independent room, but this goes down really well. It's got its own entrance, it's got its own set of rules. It is somewhere to practice being independent but safely. We're all in the house, they've got access to the house all the time. I've got a key for the den as well, so it's still one home, but this is a separate area for privacy. We've got rooms in the house for younger, under 16-year-olds. This is probably my favourite and most important thing, and it's our welcome book. So we don't really discuss this book, it's just left on the child's bed and in their own time they just go through it. But what is so important to me, because it introduces our family, there's photographs of everybody that's in our house and a little bit about them as well, what things they like, how old they are. And I think that it's, in the early days, it can be so daunting, and it's who am I with, and it's actually really nice to have a little bit of an explanation, and they also can create talking points. Because food and meals are such a high anxiety area for nearly all of the children that we've had, I like them to know what's coming, and I like them to be able to plan and not worry about their evening meal. So we have a Monday to Friday system, and on Sunday I'll plan out what we're going to have, and they simply just tick their name if they want it. And I have found that since we've introduced this system, I'm not getting asked at breakfast what's for tea, because children were obviously concerned, they were asking the question, and it's there, they open it up, and it's really lovely because spaghetti bolognese always goes down really well, and on Sunday you can hear the little whispers, I can't wait till Wednesday. Before a new foster child comes to join our family, it is an anxious time, but I would say it's more exciting than anything.
now live, Chairman.
Thank you very much, and can I welcome you all to this meeting. Just a word of caution, I've been having problems, as some of you will have discovered, with the IT. I can see you on large gallery or whatever it's called, but it's not the proper gallery. It's not particularly wonderful, so you'll have to bear with me if things go wrong. So we are now live and we are ready to go. This is somewhat of an historic occasion that you're all attending this morning, in case you didn't know. This is the 100th live stream that we have conducted since the pandemic began and we started to have our meetings virtually. I'm sure none of us thought when we had those first few meetings that we would get down, or we would get up to 100 and still going. I don't know how much longer it's going to go on for, but I feel at times I've been in all 100 of them, but clearly I haven't. So do think that you are part of history. So I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Children and Young People's Committee, which obviously is being held remotely, once again with the majority of the 11 members joining the meeting from their own homes. As well as myself, Philip Owen, who is chairman of the committee, the other members present are Councillor Saddington and Taylor, who are the two vice chairmen, Councillor Samantha Deakin, I don't know whether she's signed in now, but she should be present, Councillor Boyd Elliott, Councillor John Handley, Councillor Errol Henry, Councillor Paul Henshaw, Councillor Roger Jackson, Councillor Muriel Weiss, who is substituting for Councillor John Peck, and Councillor Liz Plant. Officers present are Colin Pettigrew, the Corporate Director for the department, Service Director for Learning and Education and Skills, Marion Clay, Service Director for Youth, Families and Social Work, Steve Edwards, the Service Director for Commissioning and Resources, Lawrence Jones, and we also have present Karen Human, Catherine Brown and Diana Bentley. This is the 8th meeting of this committee, which has been held in line with the requirements of the Coronavirus Act 2020. And I've already mentioned the possibility of technical issues. If we do lose any members from the call, then officers will seek to assist in getting them reconnected as soon as possible. If necessary, we will halt the meeting for that to happen, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed once again. If we can move then on to the agenda, the first item on the agenda are the minutes of the last meeting held on the 22nd of February. Are you all happy that they are a correct record? Please speak up if not. Yeah, thank you. The next item, apologies for absence. Well, I've announced the substitutes. I don't think have we got any other apologies, Mr. Gately?
Already mentioned, Chairman. It's the substitution of Councillor Wise for Councillor Peck. I've nothing else.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest by members and officers. Are there any declarations of interest that need to be made? No. Okay, thank you. Well, the first substantive item then is item number 4, which are the destinations of year 12-13 looked after children cohort for 2020-2021. You have the report set out in front of you, and you have a recommendation at the bottom of page 12, which I will move.
And I will second, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any other, are there any members who wish to comment or ask any questions, if you can indicate? Councillor Weiss, I can see your hand up. Can you unmute yourself, please, Councillor Weiss?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Obviously, there's much in the report that's very encouraging, particularly in terms of the increased number of young people in education, employment or training. I just have one or two questions about care leavers who are not in education, employment or training. First of all, in relation to youngsters who are asylum seekers, I would just be interested to hear perhaps an example of how such a person is receiving support. It says in paragraph 16 that a young person may be supported by a range of services. I'd just be interested to hear an example of how that is working in practice, if possible. Also, in terms of paragraph 20, it lists the future actions for supporting this cohort, some of which seem to have been in place for a little while. And I'd just be interested to hear how effective you see.
Has Councillor Wise frozen? She looks to have frozen on my screen.
I was going to say, is it just me or is Muriel stopped?
We'll give her a call, Councillor Owen. It's Deborah Newton speaking.
Okay.
Thank you.
In the meantime, does anybody else have a question or comment to make? Councillor Plant, if you'll unmute yourself and ask your questions.
Mine are actually probably, well, they are very similar, I know, to Muriel's. I mean, I think Muriel's point is that there obviously are future plans for dealing with NEET young people, but at present time we seem to have 30% of our looked after children who are NEET, which is a pretty high percentage. And I also, well, it's very, well, it's more likely that that number will probably go up simply because we've had obviously the COVID pandemic for the past year. So it's wanting to be reassured, obviously, that there's ongoing work, obviously, with those young people to try as far as possible to get them engaged, because once, I mean, young people across the board have had a really disruptive year, but if they are out of any sort of employment, education or training for a long period of time, it's going to get considerably harder to get them back in. And we really need to get them back in. So it's a sort of, you know, what are we going to be doing to address those there, and also the concerns that there will actually be more going forward. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, Councillor Taylor, I can see your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. It was an observation really regarding paragraphs 17, 18 and 19, and it is just to stress the volume and value of the positive work that is going on, particularly paragraph 18, which says that it is recognised that Nottinghamshire County Council has one of the best packages to support young people accessing university, and the Leaving Care team remains involved with those young people. So it is actually just to recognise the work and efforts of this council and of the staff working with those children. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Henshaw, thank you.
Yes, thanks, Chair. It's in relation to the paragraph 20, but it goes over onto page 12, which is the bullet point at top of the page relating to the work readiness programme which has been developed. Obviously, I'd just like to have a little bit more information on how that's working, and particularly with the with the situation that we find ourselves in. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Anything else? No. Is there any sign of Councillor Vice rejoining us or not?
Yes, we're calling her now, Councillor Owen.
Right, well, whilst we're waiting for her to be reconnected, if that's possible, and I hope it is, can somebody give Councillor Plant some reassurance? She needs some reassurance on the ongoing work to engage with the 30% NEETs in our looked after cohort. can see a hand up, but I don't know who it's attached
It's
to.
me,
Steve Edwards, thank you.
Steve Edwards. Yeah, we're doing an awful lot of work to engage with care leavers. If council remember, they agreed a few months ago additional funding for the achievement service for care leavers, which is very gratefully received, and that's about to be relaunched. And it will support 16, 17-year-old children in care and then care leavers aged 18 to 24. And that the ambition of that will be to help children get into apprenticeships often through the Kickstart programme, which we're working on at the minute, or into training and sort of university courses. So they'll have an achievement officer linked to them, and they'll link with the achievement officers will then link with partners, organisations, industry professionals, and that's already including Reed, the employment agency that allows to manage its service provision for agency workers, the Chamber of Commerce, Nottingham Trent University, Futures, the Department of Work and Pensions, Kickstart, Broxtowe Youth Homelessness, and a lot more. And we set that out in the local offer that's been already due at committee. The offer is going to be launched later this month via the Not Help Yourself website and the Not Next Steps app. And I just wanted to give, because Councillor Vice asked about some positive stories and how things work. So recent positive stories, and these were shared at last week's Looked After Children and Care Leaver board. Sorry, I should say children in our care leaver board. A 17-year-old young person has not been in regular employment or education for almost 3 years, but is about to complete the Prince's Trust programme, which he was referred to by his achievement advisor. They're now going to study a music course after completion. A young person has told us that this experience has changed his life. There's a 24-year-old care leaver who identifies as a lone parent. She's in a second year studying a law degree at university, and she's won a competition set by a local law firm. She had to undertake two two-hour training workshops, which included factual scenarios, allowing students to test their approach to contractual law issues. She won, and she's now going to represent the university at the National Client Interview competition later this year. Then another one, 20-year-old care leaver, who's not been in employment or education for the last 2 years. She found it really hard to engage again with the achievement advisor working with her. She's now on the Introduction into Health and Social Care course with Inspire. She has the DFE government laptop, which she found a real help, and now plans to go to college in September 21 to study for the level 2 health and social care qualification. So at the minute, we're Achievement Service are supporting 20 care leavers who are 21 or over who are studying at university, and that includes 4 postgraduate students. And we've got another 17 care leavers aged 18 to 21 who are completing university degrees. So it's a really mixed picture, actually, because there's some children that are doing really well to get onto the sort of basic courses. We're working with that 30% who aren't anywhere, and we've got a lot of really high-flying children as well. And some of the asylum seekers that Councillor Weiss mentioned are some of the children that go on to university. So I've probably talked too much, Councillor Owen, but I think
no,
the
that's fine. I think
achievement offer can come to next.
You've given us all reassurance. Councillor Weiss, you were cut off in your prime. Had you finished asking your questions, or was there anything else you felt the need to ask?
It's just the last question was in relation to a breakdown of ethnicity in the numbers of youngsters who are not in employment, training, etc.
I'm sure that information can be supplied to you outside of this meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think we've had quite a good discussion on this, and I think there's some very, very impressive work that is going on. And I want to echo what Councillor Taylor said as far as the packages for getting some of our young people in care into university. I think it's what has been achieved has been outstanding. Over 30 young people who are care leavers from Nottinghamshire County Council are at university. So, you know, being in care should be no handicap with Nottinghamshire in going forward onto achieving your full potential if the determination is there, and I'm delighted to be able to report on that to committee this morning. The report has, or the recommendations have been moved and seconded. Could I have a show of hands, all those in favour, please? Don't think anyone is there anyone against? If you just speak up. No, that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much for that. The next item on the agenda is promoting and improving the health of children and young people who are looked after. The report is again set out before you with one recommendation on page 24, which I am happy to move.
And I second, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from members? No. Well, in that case.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Vyse.
Yes, thank you. And I hope this doesn't mean I'll get
frozen,
taken out again. Yes, just two questions, please. In paragraph 18, there's the appointment of a lead link worker. I just wondered how that works in practice. Is it someone who advises social workers at a kind of principal social worker level, or is it someone who is engaged with individual children? Because I presume it's a county-wide post. It's very encouraging to see that the numbers of children accessing the dentist and so on, that's steadily improved. Still not quite there, but very encouraging. My other question was in paragraph 21, just how the CAMS service works in relation to looked after children. I mean, I think, as most of us know, we struggle to find access for children in the community to CAMS because of the great need there is for their services. I just wondered how does the pathway work for children looked after in terms of accessing CAMS?
Thank you. Catherine, are you going to pick that up? I think you can tell a fairly positive story about the CAMS provision, can't you? I hope you can anyway.
I can, thank you. With regards to the lead link worker, so this is somebody within the substance misuse service who works directly with children and young people, but I think is also a bit of a champion within the service, so a bit of an expertise that can be drawn on to enable that support to be available. In regards to a CAMS services, we have in Nottinghamshire a dedicated service for our young people who have looked after status, and not all areas have a dedicated service. That service is a multidisciplinary team where social workers and health professionals work together in order to meet the needs of our children and young people. And that service had a service review, I think 2 years ago, and following that received additional investment to have more kind of health input within it. It's now kind of fully staffed, and the waiting times have really come down, and we're, you know, I think on the whole really pleased with where that service is now in meeting the needs of our children.
Thank you very much. That's dealt with the questions, and thank you, Councillor Vice, for asking those questions. It enables us to show the wonderful progress that's being made and the excellent service that's being provided under this administration. So keep the questions coming. The report has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Is there anyone against? No. Thank you. That's carried. The next item on the agenda, foster care items. I've not been notified that there are any foster carers with us this morning. Steve Edwards, do we have any foster care items or not?
Carers, so we are in contact with them. We've got the first meeting week after next, I think it is. So we'll be.
I'm sorry, Steve, I didn't catch that. You were breaking up very badly at the beginning. I don't know whether everybody else found that.
No, apology. In touch with the foster carers. There aren't any items for this committee, and the next flag meeting is in a couple of weeks' time. So there may be items for the future looked after children meeting.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Item number 7 are the children and young people core data set performance for Q3. Again, you have the report set out in front of you with the appendix on the yellow pages. We have one recommendation on page 33, which I'm happy to move.
I'm happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Saddington. Any comments or questions? Councillor Plant, I can see you're indicating.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes.
Followed by Councillor Vice.
Just a couple of questions, really. Well, I think mainly for Steve. I just wondered if during the pandemic and presumably still going forward, have the child protection conferences been done virtually? And I question, has that impacted positively or negatively? And obviously there's the issue of parents who haven't got digital access, so it couldn't really be virtual. Paragraph 13, it mentions the, where are we? It's return interviews, yes, of missing children. And I just wondered again, I mean, there is a dip there, and obviously, as the report says, that this is being addressed. I was wondering again, are those return interviews being done virtually? And again, I would have thought perhaps some young people would prefer doing it that way rather than face-to-face. So just wonder if there's any information on that. And my final one, paragraph 29. What are the reasons, really? Again, I'm sure COVID comes into it. For the projected level of growth and external looked after children being approximately 75% higher than the original projection. I mean, obviously, again, we can't. I wouldn't expect for one moment that you can predict it down to the single child in terms of people can move into the county, but that seems a bit of a big hike, really. So any information on that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Vice.
Oh, thank you, Chair. It was just one question on paragraph 19, the publicity around accommodation, emergency accommodation. I just wondered how that publicity is working and what the response has been, because clearly it is a difficulty for youngsters who have been sofa surfing and so on, who need a different kind of emergency accommodation.
Okay, thank you very much for those questions. Steve Edwards, are you picking this one up again?
I do, yeah. I found the first bit, and I think this is probably best place to talk about the prediction for look after numbers, emergency accommodation issues, older children. So we have done the majority of child protection conferences virtually when the parents and the child haven't got access to the technology, or should they choose to, they'll sit in one of our offices with the chair of the conference and the social worker and other professionals and those involved will do so virtually. And we've seen an improved attendance actually from other professionals. So it takes less time because they've not got to drive to get there.
Yeah.
Parents have also reported that they haven't felt as intimidated as they might have done previously when they were sat in a big room full of professionals. There's a lot of positives to take forward. Moving on from that, in a range of meetings, not just child protection conferences. So, you know, a blended approach is something that we'll definitely be looking at. With regard to returning to children, again, we've done some of those face-to-face and some of those virtually, depending on the individual sort of situation. I think the important thing to stress is throughout the whole of the pandemic, social workers have continued to visit children and see them face-to-face, subject obviously to risk assessment when it's been necessary to do so. And since the pandemic started and children weren't in school, we've insisted that all children are contacted and spoken to, virtually or face-to-face, at least once a week. So I think we've done, in the circumstances, we've done a reasonable job of trying to keep the children in Nottinghamshire as safe as they possibly can be. But, that's been in a really, really challenging sort of environment where children have been much less visible. As you know, you have to explain any of that. Yeah. So, but I don't know if that's okay, Councillor Owen, and can have
that's fine. The proposed growth in looked after children number, the increased external placements. Are you picking that up, or is somebody else?
Oh, I was going to say Lawrence is doing it, but actually Lawrence isn't here. He's on his way to Southall to meet with the bishop there.
Right.
He'd be much better to answer that question.
Well, do you want him to supply a written answer? I think that would be acceptable in these circumstances. We might as well have a detailed answer from him to. I think it was Councillor Plant, wasn't it? Anything else that we've that's not been covered? Publicity around emergency accommodation.
I think Lawrence is sort of responsible for that area as well.
Right. Well, we'll have a written answer to that one as well, so that it's so that we're not speculating, that we can have a full answer. I think that's dealt with the ones that the remaining questions. I think you've raised an interesting prospect of changing the way the council operates once we are out of the pandemic, simply because, and this has been going on, I think, throughout the pandemic, that attendance at relevant meetings has been so much better than it was before, and people are expected to travel to locations. And I think that is clearly something that needs to be taken on board and to be used much more extensively, because it's such a saving of time, such a saving in travel. And if you get better attendances, then I would have thought, despite the limitations of the system which we seem to be having this morning, then the outcomes are going to be far better for the young people concerned. So I've no doubt that you'll want to present a report at a future meeting to outline how you're going to operate going forward. So with those few comments.
But on the other side of that, and you're absolutely right, that's really, really important that we have a blended approach to meetings.
Yeah.
Equally, we've also got to consider that we've had social workers working at home for a year, which has been incredibly sort of difficult. So we need to make sure as well, moving forward, that they also have the opportunity to be part of team meetings, have face-to-face contact with their colleagues, have the capacity in our buildings to have dedicated supervision slots face-to-face, because it's very much relationship-based practice, and it must be so difficult to learn it for all the newly qualified social workers that we've got. Yeah. And they've actually never met, or some of them, any of their colleagues other than this.
Well, that is so important. I wasn't suggesting everything was going to go on.
No.
Heaven forbid. But I think there is going to be a a much greater place for it now going forward. However, the report has been moved and seconded. I would think everyone's going to be in favour. Anybody? Let me put it this way: anybody objecting? Everybody going to be in favour? Okay, I assume that that is a unanimous vote. Thank you very much. If we can move on then to the next item, which is item number 8, the basic need programme of school expansion for 2021 to 22. You have the report with the appropriate appendix at the end, and you've got one recommendation set out on 40 and 41, which I am happy to move.
I'm happy to second it, Chairman.
Any comments or questions? Councillor Plant.
Oh, why have I done that? Sorry. Yeah, sorry, Cammy. Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I certainly welcome the obviously potential provision in West Bridgford, where there has been a need for many years in terms of, well, lots of pressure on primary and secondary school places, and that's not going to get any less because we've got huge housing expansion still to come or in the process of coming. But it's really a question. Can Marion or even you, Councillor, when was the last secondary school built in Nottinghamshire? I can't remember. So I'm just curious as to know when, you know, this will be the first new secondary school in many years, I would imagine. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? No. Funnily enough, Councillor Plant, I was Marion Clay and I were just musing about this only the other day, because I said that I couldn't remember in my lifetime a new build. I think there have been, so that's going back all of 25 years, as you can imagine. I cannot remember a new secondary school being built from scratch. Marion came up with the idea, and she might want to come in, that there had, and I think Councillor Cutts, we were discussing it with as well, came up with the idea that there had been replacement buildings of existing secondary schools in the last 50 years, but there has never been a new secondary school built that we could think of. Marion, I don't know whether you think whether you've got anything else to add to that.
I have nothing to add. I think the secondary schools have been rebuilt and replaced, and I know that Karen's on the line, and I think in Worksop, Portland and Valley have been rebuilt. I think that not the Elizabethan, I think that St Giles Special School's been rebuilt as a PFI contract. I think that it's just gone from my mind. The other secondary school in Retford has been rebuilt. Several secondary schools have been rebuilt. But I cannot think of any. Sorry, maybe somebody can help me. It's just gone from my mind. That's all.
Sorry, forgive Marion. Retford Oaks and the Elizabethan.
Yeah.
Not but I cannot think of a new secondary.
So you're part of a history-making committee again this morning. Yes, thank you for that. It is in many ways exciting times, but I have to throw just a little caution in. A little concern that I have with we have the biggest new school building programme in the history of the county council, but our proposed expansion. Oh yes, I've got a note to say that Southall Minster School was rebuilt as well on a new site, but it was an existing school. Yes, that was a very impressive one. I have some grave concerns about our colleagues at district level. They are approving plans for significant house building and are failing, in some cases completely, to ask and demand Section 106 money. As you all know, we have a statutory requirement, there's a statutory requirement placed upon us to ensure that there is a sufficiency of school places. And we get funding on the basis that developers are going to be asked to contribute appropriately to any expansion that's required through their activities. I can tell you that my own district council last week at its planning committee meeting passed plans for housing development where there had been requests for getting on not far short of £500,000 for secondary education in the North Broxtowe area, and next to nothing was asked for. Needless to say, I voted against those plans as a matter of principle. But it is a matter of real concern, and I don't want to get into the argument where we're over the two-tier system, but this is a huge problem. It really is. And I think it needs to be flagged up. And what I intend to do, I don't know whether, I think there's still one more meeting before the election of the East Midlands lead members. I intend to flag up this issue at that meeting. If there isn't one before, then whoever is attending on behalf of the county council, I think needs to raise the issue there to see if we can get a concerted effort to tackle government on this particular problem. I am very, very concerned and indeed very angry in many respects that we're not getting the support from our district colleagues that we should be getting. So with that grouch, I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Is there anyone against? Please indicate if there's any. No, that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your support on that. Right. The next item on the agenda is the Manners Sutton Primary School outcome of consultation on proposal for closure. This is pretty straightforward. You've got a recommendation on page 53, which I move.
I'll second it, Chairman.
I'll come to Councillor Saddington is the local member. Is there anything you want to add to the report, Councillor Saddington?
No, the only except the only comment I would make, Chairman, which you are aware of, and of course we have elections in the immediate future, but when the decision is made as to what to do with this school, although it says in the report, and it is correct, that the residents and parish haven't used this facility, which was given to them by Staythorpe Power Station in the build. When they were building, they were offering money to local villages, and they gave Aram money within the school to supply a community room. They haven't used it because at the time they were using Kelham Hall, but Kelham Hall has now been sold and it is not easy for them to use it. And so in the future, they may require it. And of course, it's like anything else in the report. It actually says it hasn't been used, and that is true, but that really might not happen in the future. They might wish they'd used it in order that it was recorded. However, I have said that we don't know what is going to happen to that building, but in the event it becomes a school, then it will be considered that they may still be able to use the facility of a community room. But I have made no promise whatsoever, because that I cannot do. Apart from, Chairman, there's no comment from me apart from that.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Plant, are you indicating to speak? You're muted.
Gosh, that'll be on all our tombstones, that statement. Sorry, yes, obviously support the recommendation. I just have a question. On paragraph 4, it says that the school, in September 20, the council was informed by the head teacher that the school had opened for 2021 academic year with 0 pupils on roll. And I just had this picture in my mind of him sitting there waiting on the first day of term and nobody polling up, which I'm sure didn't happen at all. But I just think that, and then it says the school has not admitted any pupils since, that whole paragraph really probably shouldn't have been there, because I'm sure that's not what actually happened.
As far as I'm aware, Councillor Plant, the staff were redeployed to work elsewhere. Marion, is there anything you want to add?
No, I think I mean, obviously these reports are written, as you know, with the necessary legal advice, and yes, we knew before then we were not expecting any pupils, but legally, until this school is closed, legally, we could admit in-year applications. And I think that paragraph is there for that purpose. The children, any children who had been there before, and in fact during the COVID arrangements had been being educated at Hallam, and in fact the reference to the head teacher of Manor Sutton is actually a reference to the head of Hallam. It's just the technicalities of it. This substantive head teacher of Hallam is overseeing and has been overseeing Manor Sutton for some time. Okay.
Thank you very much. Anyway, the report has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Anyone against? No, thank you very much. That is carried. Next item, opening of a specialist satellite school on the King Edward Primary School site. And again, you have the report in front of you with an appendix. And you have one recommendation at the bottom of page 58, which I'm happy to move.
I'm happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Vice. Oh dear, excuse me.
Sounds a creative way forward. Carlton Digby is in my district in Gedling. I know it is an outstanding school. I'm just like to hear a bit more about how this is going to work in terms of Digby staff resourcing. What is quite a significant number of, is it 24 places? As far as I know, sort of roles like designated school nurse, that role has largely been taken from the special schools. But also, I'd just like to hear a bit more about what resources Digby will be provided with in order to cover what is a very significant additional capacity. You know, will teaching staff, will some teaching staff spend time at Mansfield, or will it all be by consultation? And what's the timescale for this taking place? Yes, so the timescale and the resourcing of staff in order to take on these additional responsibilities, because although the school does have some capacity that's not being picked up, I think it's obviously quite a different challenge to be supporting work at a distance rather than working with children who are physically on site. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? No. Marion, do you want to pick this up? Timescale and resourcing.
Okay. The timescale, we are working with our property colleagues to move to as close to a September 2021 opening as is possible. We're just awaiting feedback from property and from ARC as to you know, whether or not they can reconfigure this small part of King Edward's that is possible. If it's not September, it will be as soon as possible thereafter. So the timescale is tight. The head teacher is working closely with Karen Human, who's in the meeting and may want to say something further. But a point of principle, Carlton Digby is not being asked to use only its existing resources to staff and to support this school. These are new places and will come with the appropriate funding. So like many schools already who provide support, sometimes on split sites, that will feed in. They will be able to benefit from scale, but the school will require and will be planning for additional resource as and when it is required, given the number of children who go in. Now, it's still at an early stage, and that really is a matter for the head teacher to decide. That very operational question is really for the head to decide. Karen, I don't know whether, but I mean, in principle, it will come with its own additional funding for the 25 children as well.
Yeah, thank you, Marion. Colin, you're indicating that you want to comment. You're muted.
I was muted, Councillor Owen, just as a message came into my box which covered my mute button, so I was flying blind there for a moment. So please bear with me. Yeah, so it's just by way of reassurance for Councillor Weiss. Yeah, and if I just read out the outcome of a Ofsted inspection of this school only a year ago, so undertaken on the 3rd and 4th of March 2020, probably one of Ofsted's last inspections before we went into COVID. Quality of education, outstanding. Behaviour and attitudes, outstanding. Personal development, outstanding. Leadership and management, outstanding. Early years provision, outstanding. Sixth form provision, outstanding. Yeah, and the commentary around the leadership is equally. The dedicated head teacher and senior leadership are determined for all pupils to succeed. They model the school's aim of together we achieve. Staff say their leaders are sensitive to their workload. Staff are unanimous in their view that they are proud of and enjoy working at the school. Janet Stratberg is an outstanding leader.
She is.
Fantastic head teacher. She would do nothing that would jeopardise either the school's outstanding position, or to reduce any outcome for the pupils in Carlton Digby. This is a generous but deliverable offer, and Janet enters this agreement with her eyes wide open, in full support, and we welcome her and Carlton Digby's generosity and offer. I have every confidence this will be a successful development.
Yes, well, again, Councillor Weiss, thank you for enabling us to highlight not one but two successes, I think, really. One, the Carlton Digby School itself, which we didn't include in our list of complete rebuilds, which we did in our last administration, which we were very proud of, and I was at the official opening of Carlton Digby, which, as the director has pointed out, is now an outstanding special educational needs school. And the other is the creative way that we are going to be using what would have otherwise been redundant capacity to provide additional capacity for our special educational needs pupils, and all being well with the fair wind to actually open in September this year. So I think we really do have something there to be proud of on two fronts. So thank you again, Councillor Weiss, for highlighting those successes. I'm very grateful. It saved me a job. With those few comments, the recommendations have been moved and seconded. All in favour? No one against. Thank you very much. Right, we'll move on then. Financial support for students in post-16 education. This comes every year to us. I will move the recommendation.
Chair, you've missed one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
Tackling emergency.
I got it. I had moved on. Yes, I got tackling update on tackling the emerging threats to children team. You have the report in front of you, which is set out on the in the booklet. We've got two recommendations on page 72, which I'm happy to move.
And I'll second those, Chairman.
Any comments or questions on this report? Councillor Plant, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, yes, obviously welcome this report. I mean, the tackling emerging threats to children team is a very small team, but I think they provide excellent value for money. They provide support, advice and training on issues that are really difficult and sensitive, and that many staff in our schools perhaps don't feel quite confident to actually deal with without this support and training. And obviously they list that in the appendix, and it shows the wide range of very, very difficult and sensitive issues. On the second point of the recommendation, I'm not really sure how we could monitor this work more, apart from the fact that it will be nearly 2 years since this report actually came to committee. So my suggestion would be that it did come more regularly, and that would obviously help us to monitor the excellent work that they're doing. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? No. I don't disagree with you, Councillor Plant. I think that is something for the new administration. Myself and my vice chairman did make this point to officers that we need to assess the effectiveness, if at all possible, of this particular programme, which I think is going to have some difficulty. So I have sort of sent them away to think about how we might be able to monitor that. And I think a report will need to come to committee after the election with a view of looking at it more closely. But in the meantime, you have the report, and I'm going to put the recommendations to the vote. All in favour? Thank you. No one against. Thank you. Right, if I can come to the item that I tried to skip to, which is financial support for students in post-16 education. This is a report, a standard report that comes every year. I move the recommendation on page 1. Thank you. Councillor Plant, you want to comment? You're muted again, Councillor Plant. Yes, I know. I'm like that.
You didn't hear that. Yes.
No, we didn't. You were muted.
This issue has cost council last year. I think it was something like £46 or something. So I do have concern. I mean, families have had the most difficult year, and it's still going to be difficult going forward. So I would really think that there would be far more need for this actual payment than we've had before in the past. It mentions in paragraph 15 the exceptional circumstances when it might be considered, people might be considered for as to be eligible for this, and it says fire, flood, theft, people who've been made homeless or fleeing domestic violence, and I think perhaps we could add pandemic to that, to those circumstances, really. But as I say, it's cost. What I want to know really is how is knowledge of this actually communicated? How do families know it is available? And then I would also want to know how easy is it for them to apply? Is it online, or is it paper? And what do you have to do to actually demonstrate that you actually do qualify for what is not a huge amount of money by any stretch of the imagination, and for which I think there will be a considerably more need for this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Who's going to pick up on the technicalities of this one?
Councillor Owen, I think I would prefer to write back, because I've got a general knowledge but not a specific. I think that schools and head teachers do know about this, because it's been an offer that's been there for some considerable time. I think that you apply online for this, but I would want to check. And I think the examples are given, they are for exceptional provision. So it's not in the routine. It is, as you say, and fire, flood, thefts, these exceptional circumstances. That's what it's has been there for. Again, unless Karen can confirm otherwise, I know Karen leads on this team, because this sits within school admissions. I think we prefer to write, factually, having checked with the team manager.
Yeah, thank you. Steve, you've indicated. Colin, you did indicate, but you've taken your hand down now. So if you want to speak, I'll come back to you. Steve, you've indicated.
My only comment was going to be that this isn't the only way that we support vulnerable families financially or with school uniform. So if the children are vulnerable and known to a social worker or colleagues in the early help teams, they can access section 17, what it's called, funding, and we do support a lot of children and families outside of the financial support for students legislation. So I just wanted to make sure that committee weren't left thinking that this was the only way that the council supported vulnerable children financially.
Yeah, Colin, did you want to say anything or not now?
If I may, very briefly, Councillor Owen, And we know that the vast majority of Department for Education funding is now delegated directly to schools, and that includes Pupil Premium and Pupil Premium Plus, for free school meals, etc. Between the 1st of December and the 16th of April, so a period of 20 weeks, Nottinghamshire will have devolved £3 million worth of funding to families for food and fuel, through things like food vouchers for December, half term in February, and now Easter, for children who are eligible. We know that many of our schools have exercised discretion, and some leniency with understanding around school uniform, acknowledging that children who haven't been in school for many months, will have grown and changed, and that they're now going back to school for a period of a few weeks this side of Easter, and into the summer term, and have been more flexible, I think, with regards to school uniform arrangements as a consequence of that. So I think people are very sensitive to the issues raised by members, and schools are exercising some sensible discretion with regards to that.
Thank you very much for that, Colin. Clearly there is a considerable amount of support already out there, and I would just point out that this particular policy, if you like, which comes, this particular paper, comes to us every year, and this is simply a continuation of what has gone on before under successive administrations, both Labour and Conservative. So with that, I move the report. All those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you, that's carried. So we come to the next item, which is the Principal Child and Family Social Worker Annual Report, which again you have set out in front of you, and there is one recommendation on page 90, which I'm happy to move.
And I'm happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on that? Councillor Plant.
I'm unmuted, thank you.
You're unmuted now, good.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, a very interesting report, and it really is good to see how many initiatives we have put in place and obviously have reaped the results of, in terms of trying to get obviously more social workers into the county. And we all know that it's a problem nationwide in terms of recruiting them, and even, well, retaining them as well, and say more crucially, because you've got to recruit them in order to retain them. So yeah, so and these things are paying off. I mean, one is the question as to why we're not doing the Grow Your Own one, because I think that was being discontinued. My other question really is, I mean, the Stark statement at paragraph, where is it, where it actually says that paragraph 6, that the average child and family social worker stays in the profession for 7 years, and in frontline child protection for only 3 is, you know, absolutely mind-blowing, really, when you think of, well, I mean, I'm assuming they don't leave the profession. I'm assuming they move to less difficult areas in social work than the ones they're in. But that is, you know, that is quite, well, it's shocking, really. So anything, I think, that obviously can and is being put in place that really improves the working experience for those social workers to keep them in post is the thing that's going to make the difference. I suppose it mentions, I think it's in the earlier report on the key performance indicators, that our agency forecast spend for 2019-20 was 5.4 million. And for 2021 is 5.7 million. So again, I mean, obviously all the work we're doing is to try and reduce that our reliance on agency support. Again, that hasn't happened this year, and I'm very sure it's because of COVID, because obviously we must have had staff illness and obviously greater need in terms of filling our vacancies. I'm just, for Steve, I was just sort of like to ask, if we hadn't, I mean, this is a silly question to some extent, if we hadn't have had COVID, does he think that we would be making real inroads on reducing our agency spend with the initiatives that we have put in place? And, you know, obviously going forward, when we move out of this, that we are going to, you know, get that down, basically. Thank you.
Okay, I can see no further comments or questions from members. So, Steve, would you like to come back on that, please?
Yeah, I can. I'd like to ask actually Diana, the principal social workers. So I think the agency numbers would have come down had we not had social workers working for the year, newly qualified social worker with no experience. The safety of children is obviously really the utmost sort of priority, and to exit experienced agency staff during the last 12 months, I don't think would have been wise from a safeguarding and child protection point of view. Once those colleagues gain more experience next year, and hopefully that'll be within the teams, that's something that I'd want to look at. But we also need to be cautious. So if I hand over, if that's okay with you, Councillor Owen, to Diana.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, do that.
Some of the work that
Diana.
she and the colleagues have done.
Hello, just to answer the question about the Grow Our Own scheme, that was actually a scheme that was run by Nottingham City. So we were offered places on it rather than, we didn't commission it ourselves. It was a programme the Nottingham City commissioned and offered it to make it a viable programme to other local authorities in the region. And they have decided not to recommission it this year. So we haven't been able to join it. But I suppose as an alternative, we have recruited apprentice social workers. So we are offering opportunities to our own internal staff to become qualified social workers. And also there are advantages with that. They don't have to pay the fees because we use the apprentice levy to pay the tuition fees for that. So the actual candidates themselves on the Grow Our Own did pay for their own fees, whereas they get it free through the apprentice levy. This time. Just picking up from also what Steve was saying about our new starters, we have done exceedingly well at recruiting new social workers, and we've got more people on the newly qualified social work programme this year than previous years. I think with a bit of caution, moving forward, we have to appreciate that they haven't actually been into offices very much, and they haven't had the opportunity to shadow colleagues and to experience social work in the sense that most of us did in our careers. So haven't had the same opportunities to actually visit children, go to schools, do all sorts of things. So we are thinking about how we might need to offer some additional opportunities to people who are coming to the end of the ASYE programme this year to help them catch up, and then people who are joining it at the moment, what are going to be the gaps, because I'm sure there will be some gaps. They'll be very good at IT skills and running meetings in this kind of way, but some of their personal skills might be lacking. And so things like some team meetings and just getting to know their colleagues. We've had new starters meet who haven't actually physically met their colleagues, so for next year's report there'll obviously be an update in that one, but it's something I think we do have to bear in mind.
Thank you very much. The report has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Anyone against? No, thank you very much for that. And thank you, Diana, for that and your report. The last item on the agenda is the work programme, and I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Second it, Chair.
All those in favour? Oh, Councillor Plant, did you want to say something?
Thank you. A couple of meetings ago, I did ask for a report on child and family poverty in Notts, and you did agree to that. But looking at the work programme, I can't see that it's got slotted in anywhere. Do we have any idea when that might?
I think we said it would probably come. Well, I would think the earliest now that it could come is the June meeting, so we can look forward to it then, or some people can look forward to it then.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we did take a vote before Councillor Plant interjected. I think everybody was in agreement with the work programme with that interjection. So with that, that's the end of the agenda. We've come to the end of the agenda and the end of the meeting. So I just want to thank you all for your attendance and declare the meeting closed. And thanks for bearing with the sometimes difficult technical background to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Chairman.